the prophecy of Jeremiah regarding Babylon, most scholars interpret as a word spoken against the ancient kingdom of Babylon, which existed in the time of Daniel the prophet, approximately 2,500 years ago. And most people assume the reference to the land of the Chaldeans is merely another reference to ancient geographic Babylon, which existed as a nation-state or an empire, a superpower, if you will, in the region that is currently the nation of Iraq. Mm-hmm. And that by referencing the land of the Chaldeans, the Lord's merely repeating himself and talking about the land of Babylon. But as I began to look closely at the prophecies in Jeremiah chapter 25, and this was perhaps maybe a month or two ago, where the Lord again reiterates the judgment that would come upon the king of Babylon and against that nation being ancient, literal Babylon, the geographic entity that is part of our history of the world. He also spoke about the judgment on the land of the Chaldeans, which will be made a perpetual desolation. And, it's interesting because when ancient Babylon fell, the Medo-Persian army came in the middle of the night. The king of Babylon, the royal family, and much of the military leadership were executed. And when the people woke up in the morning, it was over. Babylon had fallen. The kingdom of Babylon was gone. The king of Babylon was dead. And the nation had basically been taken over by the Medes and the Persians. But the land was not a perpetual desolation. Actually, Israel continued to live under the rule of the Medes and the Persians. Mm-hmm. Whereas this destruction that's going to occur at the end of the age in the descendant empire, which Jeremiah prophesies of in chapters 50 and 51, when it falls, its land will be utterly destroyed. It'll be contaminated by biological and nuclear weapons. So contaminated, the scripture says that everyone will leave. Even the animals that survive will migrate out of this ruined land. And so the prophecy in Jeremiah 50 is actually dealing with the daughter of Babylon, which we know to be the United States of America. But here's where it gets interesting, Pastor. Mm-hmm. I began looking at the reference to the Chaldeans, and I started doing some research. Who were the Chaldeans? Well, it turns out Chaldea was a separate nation-state, separate from ancient Babylon, which was one of the first nations that were conquered by Babylon as it became the superpower of the known world at that time. And at the point where ancient Babylon conquered Israel, we know from Jeremiah 25 that they conquered all of the known nations in that region. And according to the prophecy of Jeremiah 25, all of the nations began servitude, or they began to serve as slaves the king of Babylon and the nation of Babylon, including the Chaldeans. But in the case of the nation of the Chaldeans, they became completely assimilated into Babylon. And by the end of the reign of ancient Babylon, the Chaldean elite, the social elite of Chaldea, had actually risen in power and had become the ruling elite of ancient Babylon. And the final rulers of Babylon, in fact, were the Chaldeans, such that Chaldea had essentially affected or changed all of Babylon. The culture of the Chaldeans had become the culture of Babylon. And what's fascinating is the Chaldeans were known for the secret societies that comprised the political and social elite. The social elite who ruled the land of Babylon at the end of its reign over the nation were steeped in Luciferian mysticism. And think of the Skull and Bones, the Illuminati, the Bilderberger, Bohemian Grove, all of these manifestations of the same mystery religion of Luciferianism or occultism or witchcraft. And so, as I began to realize, this is how ancient Babylon became a satanic power. What started out an empire became a satanically controlled superstate. And so the reference to the land of the Chaldeans, in my opinion, is a reference that connects ancient geographic Babylon, which of course fell about 2,500 years ago, and passed from history, passed into antiquity. You know, Iraq today is not Mystery Babylon. It is not the ruling superpower of the earth. It's not the great nation state that when it falls, the whole world's economy will collapse. Iraq could be destroyed and the world would yawn.
Yeah.
Ancient Babylon is a superpower, but the connection between end-time Mystery Babylon and ancient Babylon is the fact that Mystery Babylon, the dawn of Babylon at the end of the age, the government and the social elite of this end-time superpower would share the same mystery religion that had dominated Babylon of antiquity. And that religion is essentially the mystery religion of Luciferianism, which manifests in many, many ways. Satan is such a liar that there's many, many permutations of essentially the mysteries of the Masonic Temple, the Illuminati, the Zoroastrians, whatever you want to call it. And that is the mystery religion of the political elite of the United States of America. So this reference in Jeremiah 50 is specifically dealing with the United States of America. You know, we know that it references the end-time Babylon as the hindermost nation. Of course, that word translates the last superpower. It also appears in Genesis. A derivative of that word, it translates to the west. And so ancient Babylon would be followed by a series of descendant empires, all of whom would share this mystery religion in which the ruling political elite would be steeped in Satanism and in the mystery religions of ancient Babylon, which were the mystery religions of the Chaldean people, and thus would all be part of this land of the Chaldean linkage, with the final version of Mystery Babylon being the United States of America.